and Lloyd and his wife, Laverne, and myself had an opportunity to go to a conference, Toastmasters conference in Moscow, Idaho. We went to Moscow, Idaho, and then Christine and I immediately went on vacation down to the Oregon coast. We got in Sunday night. I read the email this morning about the agenda and saw there was only one speaker, so I said, I will talk about some of the things that were interesting to me about the world-class speaker we had there. So these are my notes. They're not in any order, and I'm going to just kind of go through this, so bear with that. There's some interesting things that happened. Darren LaCroix was the speaker, and he's won the world champion in Toastmasters, which is just an incredible feat if you think about it. And he was a very vivacious speaker. He was not over the top and not overly polished, had some ums and uhs in there, but he was very effective at grabbing your attention and seeming like he was talking to you. He talked for 45 minutes, and I'm just going to kind of hit some of the highlights here. I should give him 5 minutes, but it's 5 to 7. He broke it down into 3 phases. First one was own the stage foundation. One was must-haves, and one was must-avoids. I filled out the must-haves. In fact, I ran out of room. The must-avoids, I didn't even fill them all out. Own the stage foundation. So what he tells himself when he's writing a speech, when I'm done speaking, what do I want my audience to do, feel, or think? And that's the first question he asks himself. And also, if he's asked to speak somewhere, that's the question he asked the proctor. If I'm going to be speaking for you, group, what do you want them to do, feel, or think? I thought that was very interesting. He puts his speeches together by tell a story, make a point. Tell a story, make a point. Tell a story, make a point. And that's how he crafts his speeches. And you must make a connection with the audience before you can entertain, inspire, or educate. He talked about telling your stories in dialogue, not narration. Talk with us. Take us there. Don't tell us. Don't be preaching. And don't be I-centric.
Give us an example. It's dialoguing and talk and narration.
Let's see, what is an example? Can you guys think of one?
We were talking about,
Okay, so.
you were talking about an appointment you had with the doctor for broken wrist or something like that, instead of talking about, I went to the doctor and he said this and I said that. What would you do instead of that?
Yeah.
I called the doctor, I said, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
As
I went to
opposed,
the doctor, my wrist was hurting, and he's talking, the doctor said, and I said, and that kind of thing. It's more of a dialogue, right?
Yeah.
Like you're talking, and like they respond.
okay, like an actual dialogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric, the example from his speech, one of them was he fails at business, and he hears a motivational speaker talking about, asks the question, what would you do if you knew you wouldn't fail? And it popped into his mind he wanted to be a stand-up comedian, except he wasn't funny, So he goes home and tells his parents, Mom, Dad, I want to be a comedian. And remember, he did it with just the look on his face, the frown and silence. And so it was the demonstration of the reaction he got that illustrated the point he was trying to make.
In fact, and that's, yes, very good. And so he went home and he told them, I want to be a comedian. And like you just said, and they met me with silence. But instead you go, I went home and I told my mom and dad I wanted to be a comedian. Silence. Like that. So you're taken there.
And then the theme of the speech, ouch, which was also his title.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Good question. And ask questions, because this is for you. He wants you to write speeches that are like poems. They're very short on details. They use a minimum of words. And one example he gave was, he was talking about Robert Goddard grew up in his neighborhood, and Robert Goddard was Father of Space and was shooting off this missile. And he talked about climbing up in a tree, and he talked about going to the tree and climbing up in a tree and being up there, this beautiful cherry tree. He said, no, now you say cherry, we're all thinking of George Washington. Cut the detail down, cut the detail down. And it was very interesting because he said that he gave the speech, what, 90 times? He would give it 3 times a day at different meetings, 2 different Toastmasters and maybe a Kiwanis or something. He'd give it 3 times a day, all 5 days a week. He gave this speech 90 times. He'd give a speech, he'd give feedback. He'd give a speech, he'd give feedback. And he had excerpts of the winning speech. In fact, did he have the whole winning speech?
Yeah.
Yes, he had the whole winning speech. And then he gave us a video clip of the 3rd time he gave the speech. And he said, what is different about this? And it was amazing. The 3rd speech was good. It was Toastmaster worthy of a club and maybe even moving on. But the biggest thing you found out that made the difference was the pacing. He was very slow and deliberate. He is naturally a funny guy, and he had built in some comic areas. And in the speech that he gave for the winning speech, you could see that he waited for the reaction. He didn't step over it. He had good pacing, and he leaned in and he talked to you. He wants you to do speeches like you're talking to one, but you're talking to all. And it's a subtle thing, but it's very interesting the way he did that. And the biggest part of that is slowing down. I would say from the first one to the last one, you may have cut out maybe a third of it.
Yeah.
Slow down. Don't be afraid of silence, of pause, of pacing. Don't run over people. Don't run over their thoughts. Here's the deal with poems. You're painting a picture and you're having them fill it in. You don't want to give them too much details because that's you and that's how you interpret it. And they're going to be taken away. They're going to be confused by detail that you're giving them. Just give them enough so that they can fill it in. Then all of a sudden it's part of them. And they're in that story, they're invested in it, and they're running with it how they see it. You focus questions, less you and I ratio. The you to I ratio should be 3 or 4 to 1. Another thing he talked about was holograms. So he came out on the stage, said a couple things, and fell flat on his face, and just stayed there.
Deliberately, you should point that out.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, pardon me. Just stayed on until people were laughing, and then he got uncomfortable. And then while he's on his face, he goes, Mr. Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, and got another laugh. But he did that right over here like this. Okay? So then he has another part of the story, and he's talking about business and losing in business and failing in business, and I failed in business. So he pointed to this hologram, which was him falling flat on his face. All right? So creating holograms, okay, number 1. Number 2, don't trip over the holograms. So he talked about another speech that he saw, which was a very emotional speech, about a soldier that had died, or somebody that had died. And he created a hologram of kneeling down at the casket and praying over this dead person. Well, later in his speech, he talked about putting his kid to bed and throwing a blanket on him, tucking him into bed. Well, you just confused the audience, because now you're putting a blanket over the casket. So holograms are powerful, but you got to be using them the right way and be aware of where you are on stage. Any other questions? I would highly recommend going to conferences just if you can see these world-class speakers speak. And some of them will be instructional, some of them will be cheerleaders, but just the way they comport themselves, just the way they do things, it was very powerful for me.